Hey guys, bachphotography here, back with another video, and today we're looking at a behind the scenes photo shoot I did. We're going to be looking at two different lenses, the Sigma 50mm f1.4 and the Sigma 85mm 1.4 as well. And now these are both going to be connected to a Sony a7R II camera, and a couple of the photos you're going to see are also going to be from a Canon 5D Mark IV. So if you're new to the channel, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my content in the future. And also, if you've been here before, hit that bell so you are the first to be notified about any new videos that come out in the future. So here we are at the first location. We decided to use this location because it wasn't too busy compared to the rest of the area that we're in. We're in the city, so there was a lot of people, and we were in on a weekend, and it was about 5:30 p.m, so there was a lot of people walking around. This area was really good because it's completely shaded, so we're going to get some really smooth skin tones just because we're not getting any harsh lights or any dark shadows around our model. And also you can see in the background there that it's much brighter than it is in the foreground, and that's because we were using backlight while the sun was low in the sky because it was the afternoon. We're going to get some beautiful yellow light and some really nice golden hour portraits in this session. So here are a few of the photos that we took in this location. So as you can see with these two photos, the 50mm is a lot wider and you can see a lot more of the background, whereas the 85mm you're way more cropped in, and also the background is more out of focus because of the compression that a longer lens has. So an 85 is longer than a 50mm, so it's going to have a blurrier background and a tighter crop. Let me know in the comments if you prefer the 50 or the 85 in this situation. Me personally, I prefer the 50mm in this situation because I like a little bit of a wider image for this particular environment. So here we are at the second area that we were shooting. We didn't actually shoot here for very long because we realized that there was like a kid's playground in the background, and we didn't really want to get any photos of the kids in these photos. So we only shot a couple of shots here and then moved to the next location. I also decided to use just the 85mm for these photos, just so I could really blur out the background and make it so you couldn't see anything in the background and you could only see our model here in the foreground in focus. So here are a couple of photos I took here, but we quickly moved on to the next location. So the next location is on the stairs that we found, and there were a really long shallow set of stairs, so we were able to take a few shots as we were going all the way up the stairs from the bottom to the top. And the reason that we started at the bottom and went all the way up to the top of the stairs is because as the sun was setting, we needed to get higher up so that we could get that beautiful golden light. So I only used a 50mm for these photos just because we were in a little bit more of a tight area, and because I was sort of standing off of the stairs on a really steep hill, I couldn't go too far back, otherwise I'd be too low and wouldn't be able to get any good photos. So we stuck with the 50mm for this area and got some really nice photos. So here are a few of the photos that we took in this area. So for portraits, I always prefer to use the 85mm if I have enough space, just because I really like how blurry you can make the background, and I also think that the compression you get from an 85mm lens is really flattering to a human's face. So it's always better, in my opinion, if you have the space to use an 85mm lens. But the problem is often you don't have the space and you need to use something else to get the photo just because there is no room for you to use an 85mm. And this is one of those perfect examples where I would have liked to use an 85mm, but I could only use a 50 because of the space constraints that I had. So that's why it's always nice to have a whole bunch of lenses, and a 50mm and an 85mm are two really good ones for portrait photography. So you can see in this video that the sunlight from the sun at this time of the day was really quite harsh, even though it was really low in the sky. So in my opinion, it's always good, if you can, to filter that golden light with something that's going to diffuse the light a little bit and make it a little less harsh. Now, something perfect for this would be a tree, because then you get a whole bunch of different speckles of light coming through the tree and it makes beautiful bokeh in the background. So we decided to move on from this location because the sunlight was just getting a little bit too harsh, and we wanted to find somewhere that was a little bit lighter and a little bit more of a smooth tonality in the background. So here we are at the next location, and the sun was really starting to set. We only had about an hour left before it was going to be completely dark. So we decided to go next to the water because during the golden hour you get a really beautiful contrast between the blue of the water and then the orange and yellow of the golden light. And these are two very popular colors that you'll see together a lot in cinematography because blue and orange are complementary colors, and that means that you get a really nice cinematic look in your images. So here are a few of the photos we did here, and I'm also going to show you one of the 250 megapixel images that I took using my A7R II, and if you're interested in how I did that, I'm going to link in the description a video on how you can get huge images from pretty much any camera that you like. So I think this is the perfect example of where you can use an 85mm and you'll get nicer results than using a 50mm. You can see in the background there are trees and water, and these are perfect candidates to make super blurry and look super creamy. And we don't really have anything else in the background that's interesting, so because it's so far away as well, it gets super blurry and we can really draw focus to our model here in the foreground. We could have used a 50mm here, but we had plenty of space to move back as far as we needed to go to get some nice out of focus backgrounds and sharp images with the 85mm lens. And just a little side point and tip for all of you guys when you're shooting in an area that you don't have control over all the time, just make sure to clean up the area and remove any sort of distractions from the scene if you're able to. So for example, you can see in this scene, we have a water bottle in the way. So what we've done is we've just pushed that out of the way just so it's not in the frame and distracting from the overall shot. And just doing these little things is going to save you a lot of time in post-production, so you don't have to edit them out or anything like that, and it's just going to make your image look a lot more clean, and it's going to also look like you prepared the image a little bit more. It's just going to overall make the photo better quality. So now we're coming up to the end of our shoot, and we just found this one final area to get some photos before we wrap it all up and call it a day. And it was a really great area to shoot all of this area because there were so many different places within 2 or 3 minutes walks of each other where we could get completely different photos. And I really like this location because we have a few lights in the background and some interesting architecture, and I think it just makes for some more interesting photos having all of those things in the background. And you can see at the top of the frame of this video is all of the golden light, and you can see that it's only about 45 minutes before the light is going to go behind these buildings and then it's going to go dark. So this is the perfect time to be taking golden hour portraits. And I think using a 50mm is the perfect focal length just because there is some more interesting background and we can get a really nice take of the entire scene with the 50mm lens. Now I also shot on the 85mm lens, but that was mainly so I could do image stitching and make some really massive images. So once again, if you're interested in making huge images with any camera, I'll leave in the description a link to that video so you can learn a little bit about that. But for these photos, we mainly used a 50mm, and when we stitched together the 85mm photos, it made it much wider and more of a sort of 40mm kind of look. So I think that a regular focal length lens is perfect for these types of photos, and it also gives you enough compression to get some nice blurry backgrounds and also some nice sharp features in our model here. So now let's have a look at some of the photos that we got from this location, and then I'm going to go into Photoshop and we're going to edit one of the photos from this location as well. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. The first thing we're going to do is just boost the clarity up because we're getting a lot of haze because it is the golden hour. So also because it's the golden hour and everything's so orange, your camera is going to make everything really blue to compensate. So we're going to boost up the color balance really yellow, and then we're just going to mess around with the exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites and blacks, just until we get a nice contrast in the image, a nice level of blacks and whites in the image as well. So this can take a little bit of time, just messing around with the sliders until we get the exact right color, exact right tone, contrast, and shadow quality that we like. So I think that's about right, something nice and yellow and warm. The next thing we're going to do is just get the paintbrush tool and then paint some more contrast and clarity and a little bit of exposure as well into the eyes, just to really make them pop from the scene. And because we weren't shooting where the model had a direct light into her face, it's always nice just to add a little bit more exposure into the eyes just to make them pop a little bit more. So now I'm just making a masking tool by dropping the exposures, shadows and blacks, and then painting all of the areas that I would like to smooth the skin. Now this is a pretty crude way to smooth skin, and there are definitely better ways to do it if you have more time. But just because I'm going to edit this one nice and quickly, I'm just going to drop the clarity of the model's skin just to smooth it out in a quick way that doesn't take 20 or 30 minutes to get it perfect. So we're just here brushing all of the areas that we would like to make a little bit smoother, and then we're going to go into the details later and start removing any little blemishes that we see. So make sure you don't hit the nose or the eyes or the mouth when you're doing this, because you want those areas to be as sharp as possible, because those are the areas you're going to be looking at when you look at a model in the photo. Okay, so just removing those changes and then adding some clarity there. So now the skin is just a little bit smoother than it was before. So just messing around with the adjustment sliders again, just until we get the perfect tone. And I think that's about right. I'm just going to add a little bit more vibrance as well, and then just mess around slightly with the green and purple hue, just until I get the right color that I like. I think that's about right. So now we're going to jump into native Photoshop and do a little bit of skin smoothing, and then finish off this image. Now I'm going to speed up the skin smoothing section just because this can take a little bit of time, and I don't want the video to be too long, so I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, that's pretty much everything for skin smoothing. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to filter and then click the Liquify tool, and we're just going to make Lizzie's hair a little bit more full and a little bit more fluffy, just to add some size to the hair pretty much. So you don't want to get a brush that's too big, and you've got to make sure not to distort the face at all when you're doing this. But because I use quite a soft brush, I'm just getting the hair here, even though you can see that the Liquify tool itself is actually going into Lizzie's face a little bit. So just a little bit of a change there makes a really big difference to how full and big the hair looks. Okay, so now because I've made the image so yellow, I've just made Lizzie's teeth a little bit yellow because of those color balance changes. So I'm just going to make a selection of her teeth and then go into the hue and saturation channels, go to yellows, and then I can see what I'm doing. Just boost them all the way up so I can see what colors we're working with, and then remove any of the reds that her lips are, and then just reduce the saturation. So now all of those yellows and oranges that were in her teeth are gone and moved to white. So a final thing I'm going to do here, just to make the background a little bit more blurry, is another crude way that you can blur the background. Basically all you have to do is make a selection of your subject that's in focus, then click the Select Inverse tool, then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and choose 1 pixel of blur. Every time you add a pixel of blur, just move your selection a little bit so you're not getting any hard lines where you've started blurring. And that's everything for this photo. If you're still here, please like and subscribe, and I really hope that you enjoyed this content. Remember, there are going to be some raw files in the description if you're interested in editing some of my photos. There's also going to be the video about image stitching if you're looking at making massive images from your camera that may not have the biggest sensor size or the most megapixels. All of the equipment I used from this video is also going to be in the description, so if you're interested in any of that, please go check that out as well. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much for watching once again, and I will see you in the next one.